Good morning, County Council. Welcome to May. I would ask Mr. Tifo to take the roll call, please.
Thank you, Warden. Councillor Arnold, please. Present. Thank you. Councillor Bird. Present. Thank you. Councillor Bouchy. Present. Thank you. Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Broad.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Cook. Present. Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Present.
Thank you. Deputy Warden Hand.
Present.
Thank you. Alternate Member Joel Field.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Napper. Thank you. Councillor Rombout.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Stark.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Veen. Councillor Veen. Councillor Weber.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Present.
Thank you. And Warden Marriott.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinabeg. It is through the connection of the Anishinabeg with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. I'd ask Mr. Tifo to swear in our alternate, Joel Field, alternate to Councillor Loosley of the town of Petrolia, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. For Council's information, in accordance with Council's policy on alternate members, any alternate member who appears before this Council for the first time must be sworn in. So we will proceed with the swearing in of Mr. Field. If you may stand, please. Will you please repeat after me? I, Joel Field, do solemnly promise and declare that I will truly, faithfully, and impartially, to the best of my knowledge and ability, execute the office of councillor to which I have been elected in the county of Lambton. And that I have not received and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof for the exercise of any partiality or malversation or other undue execution of such office. And that I will disclose any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, as required by and in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And that you make the solemn declaration consciously, believing it to be true, and knowing that it is of the same force and effect as if made under oath.
And I make this solemnly declaration consciously believing it is as made.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Welcome to County Council. I would ask that you sign that form, and then I will execute it at the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you. This time, I'd ask any member of council to declare a pecuniary interest or where it may arise during the meeting as well. Seeing none, I would look for a motion to go in camera for the reasons on the agenda. Deputy Warden Hand and Councillor Rumbouts. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, welcome back to the open session, and welcome to those online watching the meeting this morning. I'd ask Mr. Tifo to rise and report of in camera, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I have two brief issues to report on. County Council met in camera for a period of 32 minutes this morning to address two issues. One, to review and approve the minutes of County Council's in-camera meeting of April 6th, 2022. And secondly, to consider and address a personnel matter pertaining to compensation. Those are the matters that I have to report.
Okay, thank you. And item number 8, Board of Health. Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Renaday. Are you online, Dr. Renaday? There you are. Good morning.
Morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, that's
okay.
Pretty good, Dr. Renaday.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Perhaps this is one of the shortest updates that I've ever given this group. So in some ways, that's a good sign, I think. Our cases are generally coming down. They're coming down fairly gradually, but a couple of weeks ago we had sort of 40 to 50 cases a day. Then it was more like 30 to 40, and nowadays for the last week or so, it's been more like 20 to 30 cases a day. Remember that those cases are underestimates of the true prevalence of disease in the population because they are just the PCR tests that are reported to us rather than all of the tests or even all of the people who have symptoms but just carry on, right? Just recover at home, maybe they don't get a test and so forth. Things that we've already gone over before, but just reminders. Also, we have a handful of institutional outbreaks that we're actively working with those facilities to manage. And again, remember that the burden of disease, even in these populations, because they're highly vaccinated, looks very, very different from how it used to. So that's also an encouraging feature, along with the fact that there are some additional treatments that are being made available through the healthcare system for people who have diagnosed COVID-19. So the picture, I would say, from all of those perspectives is then improving. And then finally, I would just say the vaccination program carries on. As people become eligible, we're bringing them in to a variety of clinics as well as pharmacies and so forth to be re-immunized. But for this group's awareness, I suspect that where it's going to make the biggest difference is really going to be towards the fall. So, in terms of just making sure that people have maximal protection as protection wanes, the fall is really when we're looking to slightly boost people's level of protection before, more indoor activities and more indoor and the cold weather comes back and so forth. So that's really the time horizon that we're looking for in terms of, maybe changing the dynamics around the COVID immunization program. But right now it's sort of slow and steady, and that's reasonable and appropriate. So that's all.
Thank you, Dr. Renaday. Are there any questions for Dr. Renaday? Councillor Bird and then Councillor White.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. And thank you, Dr. Renaday, for the update rather. I have two questions for you. The first one, since all the vaccinations and boosters and everything else, after all the total sort of rollout, there's been a really acute increase in hepatitis cases in children, which has never been seen before. And I wondered how you can explain that to us, please.
Sure. I can't explain it because it looks like that's something that's being investigated currently around the world. So there are increasing cases of hepatitis that are not linked to the known sort of 5 viral hepatitis types. So I should just go back and say hepatitis just really means inflammation of the liver, and that can be caused by a number of different things. Some are infectious causes and some are non-infectious causes. And the cause of this circulating hepatitis is yet to be determined. It is thought to be related. One theory right now is that it is related to a very common virus, an adenovirus that passes around through populations, especially children. But there's nothing definitive yet. There's lots of investigation going on around the world. One of the actions certainly that the provincial government has taken is to make these hepatitis cases reportable to Public Health Ontario from hospitals. So if there's any acute hepatitis in a child, then we report it to Public Health Ontario. The hospital is required to report it to Public Health Ontario so that those cases can be analyzed. But right now, there's no more on that front.
Okay, thank you. And the second point is I've got a comment and then I want to ask your thoughts, please. With the recently court-ordered release of documents from the FDA regarding the documents they produced when they reviewed and assessed and approved the Pfizer vaccination, and you've probably been following all this, but the Freedom of Information Act says that they only have to produce 500 documents a month, whereas the court asked them to produce 5,500 per month. Now, if this information, if there was nothing to worry about and it was all above board, why was this not in the public domain? Why are they opting to produce the minimum amount of documents? I just wondered what your thought was on all this. Thank you.
I mean, thank you, Councillor. I guess my thought would be that I don't really have a comment on it at all because it's happening in the United States, right? It's the FDA and their court system. And so it's not something that I'm fully aware of or really in a position to comment on in any way.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Ward Marriott. Dr. Renaday, just to clarify what you were discussing earlier, is it your expectation then that coming into the fall, we will be looking at COVID boosters, perhaps variations of COVID boosters, much to be distributed much in the same way that we distribute flu shots annually? Is that the phase that we're at right now?
Thanks, Councillor. I think so. It's a little bit hard to say for sure, but I think that we would be moving to sort of thinking about a COVID vaccine as more like a flu vaccine, and therefore it would be made available through those channels like pharmacies, potentially healthcare providers if they're able and willing to offer it, and then also public health, right? And also that we would be, like, I wouldn't expect by this fall that we would get any novel formulations of the vaccine, or even that we would get any formulations that allow us to administer it in like one shot to have a flu shot and a COVID shot. There's too many manufacturing pieces that need to be resolved around that for me to be able to expect that that would come out by September. So what you would probably see by this fall is flu shot administration as normal and COVID shot administration as an add-on to that program.
Okay. Councillor Rumboats.
Thank you, Dr. Renaday. Just in follow-up to Councillor White's question, over the past year, we've recommended, especially for our seniors, that they have at least 4 doses by this point. Is that going to be something that carries on, that we can expect that our seniors are going to have 4 doses every year? Like our federal government has purchased more than enough for everyone in the population to have multiple doses. So I know I have people in my community who have been injured by the vaccine and who are concerned about the possibility of being required to have multiple doses.
Thanks, Councillor. It's very unlikely. What is more likely is that a dose would be recommended coming into fall. And so, vaccines are all different, right? They have different properties, and some of them are such that when you complete a full series of vaccination, we consider you to be complete. And that was the starting point for this vaccine. But it looks like, and I think you're going to see a shift in how we consider the vaccine, such that it won't be related to the completion of a full series. It'll be more like thinking about a flu shot, the way we say, here's your opportunity to get it perhaps once every year. And it may not matter whether you had 2, 3, 4 doses before. Like, we may actually be leaving behind the consideration of what a primary series was in favor of considering a booster dose, as we see a season progress. That's probably going to take some time, but we'll make steps towards getting there this fall. That would be my expectation around it. So it wouldn't, by the fall, I can't say this for sure, but I think what we would be seeing is a booster dose indicated regardless of whatever your primary series was. It would just be 1 dose. It probably wouldn't be 2 or 3 or 4 at that point.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Renaday. Any other questions before we let him go? Seeing none, thank you again, Dr. Renaday. for your update, and have a good summer.
Okay, thanks. You too.
So that moves us to item number 9. I'd look for a motion to invite the delegation to present to County Council. Moved by Deputy Warden Han, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. All in favor? That's carried. Our delegation is Bonnie Dawson, Director, JD Lawn Service, and Heather Dawson, Office Manager, Customer Relations, JD Lawn Service. We'll be presenting to County Council regarding the no parking along County Road number 7, Lakeshore Road, between Murphy Road and Telfer Road. You have 10 minutes, Ms. Dawson. And Ms. Dawson, are you online? There we come.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome to Lambton County Council, and you now have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Warden Marriott and members of Council. Thank you for your time today. My name's Bonnie Dawson. I'm the Director of JD Lawn Service in Sarnia, and this is Heather Dawson, Office Manager. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with our company, we're a family-owned and operated grounds maintenance company offering residential and commercial services throughout Lambton County, and we've been operating for the last 32 years. At JD Lawn Service, we are passionate about building relationships with customers through exceptional service and take pride in the community we live and work in. We're here today to discuss the no parking issue along County Road 7 or Lakeshore Road and how it will impact our operations and many other contractors throughout the city. As you're aware, City of Sarnia has received complaints from pedestrians and cyclists regarding vehicles parked along the shoulder, forcing them out onto the road. We're not unsympathetic to this concern. However, we want to voice our own concern as it relates to this issue. The stretch of Lakeshore Road running from Modeland to Telfer Road was reconstructed over the past 2 years to include wider paved shoulders to encourage walking and cycling. However, it failed to take into consideration service vehicles, and as well the soil preparation along the side of the road was not compacted properly for sod, making the side of the road extremely soft. The county has suggested to us by pulling into driveways of homes that we're servicing, and in a perfect world, that's what we would do in every instance. Unfortunately, there are many driveways along Lakeshore Road that make it impossible, as you'll see from the coming videos of our presentation. In addition, side streets are extremely limited, especially within the stretch from Modeland to Blackwell Road, which there are no side streets. Pulling into driveways and then backing out of them in many scenarios poses a concern for the safety of not only our staff, but also the public. Here's a brief overview of some of the challenges that we are faced if we were to pull in and back out of a number of driveways along Lakeshore Road. So obstacles such as low-hanging tree limbs, gas meters, and narrow driveways are just a few things that our operators are up against, as you'll see in the coming videos. The equipment we use is required in order to perform our services. The enclosed trailer is equipped with washroom facilities for our staff, and it acts as a barrier for theft, which has been a serious issue in the past, which is why we went to the enclosed trailers to begin with. Finally, when it comes to safety, this is a top priority for our staff. Lakeshore Road, as we know, is extremely busy. Many of times motorists are not paying attention, they're going far too fast, or they're attempting to pass when it is unsafe to do so. We do not want to put our staff at risk by backing into oncoming traffic. In some scenarios, it's a one-man crew, which makes it even more dangerous if they were to back out of driveways. So we have some videos here to basically give you some visual on what our staff is up against, pulling into and backing out of driveways.
Please keep in mind that the operator in all of these videos has over 17 years experience driving a truck and a trailer. In this video, the driveway is narrow to begin with, and there's a gas meter on the corner, which does not allow him to pull in. Video number 2 shows another obstacle. In this scenario, there's a stone pillar, doesn't allow for our equipment to make the turn. Video 3, our operator is attempting to back up, and this does cause a concern for the safety of motorists and pedestrian cyclists. Video number 4 shows our trailer, truck and trailer pulling in and having a hard time making the turn. Sorry, just a technical difficulty here. On the final video, the operator is attempting to back out of the same driveway and it has a significant incline. As you can see, this is not an easy task and could result in an accident.
My apologies. Oh, there it is. There we go. Okay, the video doesn't appear to want to play, but it was showing him backing up and the struggle he faced with the incline as well as the oncoming traffic. Our proposal to Lambton County Council and the City of Sarnia is to come up with a solution that works for everyone. Our request is that our service vehicles, as well as others, have an exemption during the days of Monday through Saturday between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. This would be sufficient for us to continue our service to these affected customers. On an average, our equipment is parked on the side of the road for approximately 1 hour, always ensuring pylons are set out and trailer lights are flashing. The motion that we would like to present to County Council is to request that service vehicles and or contractor vehicles be exempt from no parking along Lakeshore Road between Murphy Road and Telfer Road and allowed temporary parking Monday through Saturday between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Proper signage to be displayed while service and or contractor vehicles are parked. Whether you're a service vehicle, a pedestrian, or a cyclist, we all need to share the road. Everyone plays a part in safety. Thank you. That concludes our presentation. So if there's any questions or comments, we'll do our best to answer them.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions? Councillor White, and then Councillor Bradley.
I guess my main concern with this is the hours highlighted here. And of course, the season of the work tends to coincide with when more children would be home, and then perhaps more prone to being exposed to the traffic should this exemption be put into place. That's my main concern with this at this point, is just how it coincides with school closures for the summer. I guess I would like to hear from our General Manager of Infrastructure regarding this particular issue as to whether or not an exemption like this would be normal, and if an exemption already exists for other service vehicles such as utility vehicles.
Would you like to comment on that, Mr. Cole?
Through you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Councillor White. Those are good questions. I'm not aware that we have any formal exemptions for other vehicles, but work within the road allowance does occur, and those vehicles such as low water hydro, when they have to go do work, they set up appropriate traffic control along those sections to ensure that there's flagging and other mechanisms in place. As far as parking restrictions on roadways go, along county roads, especially in the urban environments, we typically take our lead from the local municipalities. So the City of Sarnia did have a resolution for the restriction of parking along Lakeshore Road in this instance, as where that's not posing an adverse or an abnormal road condition. We would be inclined to follow the city's lead. If that was something the city wanted to pursue, we would work with them to pursue that. But really, even when we go and add parking lanes on county roadways, we look to the local municipality to facilitate that. That's not something the county constructs.
Can I speak on that?
Go ahead, Councillor Boucher.
I think that what we heard was a motion from the delegation, and I'll be glad to second it. It's not, we're not talking about one block on Lakeshore Road. We're not talking about home. We're talking about from Murphy to Telford. That's a long stretch. And those people are having problems. I mean, you could see it yourself. I don't want to be one of those drivers. And now it might be easy, but as the days advance, when the leaves start falling down, watch out. I mean, there'll be trucks all over. The neighbors will be disturbed, and I think it's time to help those people. They're making a living. And the people there are not very happy about it. So the motion is, I think, what we have is to be carried, I hope, and just move on.
Okay, we don't have a motion yet, Councillor Boucher, but I think just before we do that, Councillor Bradley, he had a comment.
Yeah, I'm willing to move the motion, and I would make it on a very strict time frame because of the time of year. And I guess I'm going to direct your question, Mr. Tebow, and then I'm going to come back to the delegation. Who actually makes the call on this relief? As I heard Mr. Cole talk, the way I'm reading it is, it would be the city that would say to the county, we're willing to give relief if we are willing to give relief.
Mr. Tebow, please. Thank you. Mr. Tebow.
Thank you, Warden. Councillor Bradley, in discussions with Mr. Cole over this, the past practice, as Mr. Cole has explained, is that we'll take the lead and from the City of Sarnia on these parking issues, and then once the City of Sarnia has addressed them, made its own recommendations in consultation with our staff, where a bylaw is required to control traffic, and then it will come back to Lambton County Council. with full information, and that full information includes consultation with the City of Sarnia. So that's typically the approach, and that's the approach that we take pretty much in all matters where local interests are at stake, but definitely the approach that has been taken on road movement and road parking issues. Now, that's the practice, and I think that's a proper procedure to follow. Do we have to follow that process from a pure, let's call it legislative perspective? No, but nonetheless, I think it's the proper procedure to follow.
Okay.
If I could just, comment that City Council's agenda has already been set for Monday night, but we won't be meeting for another 3 weeks at least from then. So what I was going to suggest the delegation is put a request in today to the clerk's office in the city. I have the right to waive the deadline, and I would do so we get it on the Monday night agenda. Second part of this is a much bigger issue. That's what I want to say to the delegation. Over the years, I've dealt with complaints throughout the city about ticketing, whether it be in the Watson Street area, London Road, wherever, because of this issue of vehicles being on the road and not having the right to be there. So do you have any comments on that?
That's directed to
the delegation.
Go ahead, Ms. Dawson.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question again there?
Well, this is not just a Lakeshore Road issue.
Right, right.
I get complaints every summer from companies like yours and others that have been ticketed in other parts of the city.
Yeah.
So I'd prefer on any issue to have a more global approach than just deal with this. And then people say, well, why aren't you dealing with my neighborhood? And why are you, the other companies?
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's exactly, we agree with that. And it is an issue not only for us, but for whether it's, a construction company, building a house or an addition or whatever the case may be, whether it's someone like the Groots that's doing a landscape installation. We have specialized equipment, and unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't always fit each scenario, each street's issues. We have flashing lights in all our trailers. We put pylons out. If there's additional signage that would be suggested to use, we are open to suggestions to help alleviate these problems. Like I said, not only for us, but for other contractors around the city. Because we want to work with the city, we want to work with the county, and we want to work with the citizens of the city to ensure that our services can be performed, because a great number of our clients are elderly people. They hire us for the service so they can stay in their own home. Whether it's cutting the grass or cleaning up the leaves, plowing the snow, whatever the case may be. And like I said, that equipment is quite specialized. So we're open to suggestions on how we can kind of get past these issues, because yes, ticketing has been an issue in the past. There's just some places we just have absolutely no parking.
And Lakeshore Road being, I guess that's kind of why we've addressed it, Lakeshore Road specifically, because that's where we have had problems. We have been threatened with tickets. Things are escalating. So that's where the Lakeshore Road issue comes into play, but we're certainly open to discussing it elsewhere. But Lakeshore Road is our concern, and it's what we have had issues with.
Okay, well then let's keep it specific to Lakeshore. Can you get a letter into the city clerk? You don't need to come and speak. Just saying you've brought this to county council. Can we get an answer from the city council on the direction they want in a very timely manner? Okay. Otherwise, you won't be getting an answer till July or August.
Right. Yeah, we can draft up a letter today and send it to whoever it needs to go to.
And I will pass that back to the clerk. So you're going to do something. It
so
doesn't have to be elaborate. You've already made a good presentation.
Councillor Bradley,
making our points on the parking issue.
So Councillor Bradley, you were making that motion?
Yes.
Okay, and it's seconded by Councillor Boucher. And then we have Councillor Rumbouts and then Councillor Weaver.
Just to address back to what Councillor White was saying, it sounds like this is a safety issue, and from what we've seen in this delegation, it's more dangerous for these trailers to be backing out when you've got kids on bikes and things like that. Whereas if they're parked along the side of the road, I would think that would be much safer from a community perspective. And like the lady said, this is an issue. We have more seniors aging in place. There's definitely a need for this service. And I have no problem passing this motion since this is a county road. It sounds to me like they have the support of the city from the councillors here. So I think it makes sense to move forward today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Weber.
Thank you, Warden Mary. Probably through to Mr. Tufo. So right now we put bicycle lanes on the sides of the road for people to utilize. We have no parking area there to make it safe for the bicycles. If we, as a county, exempt for certain hours and a bicycle has to go around one of these vehicles, where does the liability lie, with the county or with the city? I guess it depends who provides I guess my assumption is it depends who provides the exemption and allows that there, or with the company that's parked on the side of the road. So I'd ask Mr. Tifo to...
Mr. Tifo, please.
Just briefly, and I don't want this to be interpreted as what I would call pure, final kind of legal advice, given public forum of this. But when it comes to policy-related matters, which this would be one in terms of controlling parking, moving of motor vehicles on public highways, there would be statutory considerations and protections for those decisions, and therefore liability questions would be on a policy decision, pure policy decision, would be diluted, if I could put it that way, meaning that it ought not drive the policy consideration, the policy decision to be made. That being said, as you all know, people sue people for whatever reason, and you can't prevent that. But it's, do they have proper grounds to commence civil litigation and look for risks and liabilities? And the short answer to that is under your legislation and the Municipal Act for policy-related decisions, there are protections.
We first have Councillor Arnold and then Deputy Warden Han.
Thank you, Warden Marriott, members of County Council. I believe Mr. Cole had spoke about some of the other utility companies, and because of the size of the trailer, and it's enclosed, and you cannot see around them. And I think Mr. Cole had talked about flag people being out there on site on other major utilities, and I hope the city takes that into consideration as they move forward, because a person on a bicycle coming up behind a trailer that size, that's partially on the road, there needs to be some protection there more than just a flag on the back of a trailer or a pylon. They need to know that it's safe to go around. And I think Mr. Cole has policies already in place for large utilities, normal, that people would work towards. So hopefully that this is done in conjunction with Mr. Cole's input as we go forward.
Thank you. Deputy Warden Han.
Thank you. I just wanted to say to the presenters that I was impressed by the amount of work that you put into bringing your issue forward so that we could all clearly see what was happening. And I'm sympathetic to your issues. It's a very complex issue, so I'll be interested to see what happens when you go to the city on Monday night. But I sympathize with those trying to do business and the size of that equipment. It would make sense that they be allowed an exemption, but as I say, it's a complex issue, and we'll see what happens at your city council. Thank you.
Okay, seeing Councillor White.
Thank you, Warden. Just curious, I drive that road every day, and there are utility trucks parked every day in large numbers often. When they are blocking the bike lane, it's not a clear path in the travel lane anyway, so generally speaking, traffic has to hold and wait for opposing traffic to clear in order to go around it. Would it be safer or an option to maintain the shoulder lane and just allow vehicles to actually just park on the actual roadway itself, since they're basically blocking it anyway?
Mr. Cole, please.
Through you, Mr. Warden. Look, in all of these types of construction instances, we look to the provincial regulations for on-street obstruction of traffic. There is an Ontario Book 7 that dictates how traffic is supposed to manage itself in a construction zone, including in these types of instances. It's very well known in the industry, and it would be a violation of the Occupational Health and Safety Act in order to ignore those. That our direction to contractors working on the roadway is always that they have to follow those occupational health and safety and Ontario traffic regulations. And that's how we govern. We don't make up the rules as to how that would work or not work. We're directing them to those resources and that legislation.
Thank you. Any other questions before we call the vote? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Warden. What is the motion?
To support the allowance, I'll let Mr. Tifo repeat it, but I believe it's to support the exemption that's proposed by the presenters.
Yeah, so the proposal from the presenters is at page 18 of 63 of the materials on that slide, which was one of the last slides. And if I understand correctly, it is a good question. If I understand correctly, you would be moving to support in principle the proposal from J.D. Lawn, subject to further discussions between the City of Sarnia and County of Lambton. And then a report would have to be brought back.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks for your presentation, and I guess you have some homework to do for City Council.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your time today.
Moving on to item number 10, minutes of open council of April the 6th. I'd look for a motion to adopt those minutes. Deputy Warden Hand and Councillor Miller, all in favor? That's carried. And number 11, correspondence to receive and file. We have 2 correspondence that's recommended to receive and file. How would you like to deal with these? Councillor Weber? So moved by Councillor Weber, seconded by Councillor Rumboats. All in favor? That's carried. We have no information reports. And number 13, items not requiring a motion. We have Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership Board minutes dated January 21st, as well as the Tourism Sarnia Lambton Board minutes dated April 21st. Councillor Cook moves, seconded by Councillor Napper. All in favor? It's carried. And number 14, reports requiring a motion under Corporate Services Division. We have two reports. How does council wish to proceed with these? Councillor Rumbouts. Okay, A is moved. Do we have a seconder? Deputy Warden Hand. All in favor? It's carried. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Councillor Napper.
Yeah, there's a question. Can I just get a little clarification here? I see we put a stipend in back a few years ago there for the deputy warden, and now we seem to be quite a substantial increase. Now, I just could somebody tell me exactly what the workload is of the deputy warden these days? It was one time on an as-needed basis, and I just think this. Not knocking the, excuse me, we'll stand up. Not knocking the position, but it just seems to me that it's getting out of hand here. I think a little higher than what we anticipated when we first started this thing out.
Okay, I'm not sure who would like to answer that. Councillor Arnold volunteers.
Yeah, I'll volunteer, Ward Marriott, and a great point by past Deputy Warden Napper. In the old days, we all got per diems, when we went out, and if the warden had to ask somebody to fill in, especially the deputy warden, they could apply for a per diem. It's no different than a number of other committees that we sat on or sit on. And in 2018, that's all changed. There's no more per diems paid for per meetings or per events. And I think that's why the substantial increase that past Deputy Warden Napper refers to occurred, was so that we could keep them so that they are actually being compensated for their time and effort they're putting in. And I think it's very positive that it was done that way, but that's past warden's perspective.
Okay, anybody else? Kara, does any staff want to comment on this? Mr. Tifo, please.
Yes, if I understand the question is how did the deputy warden arrive at the current salary that it earned? And that's true. Councillor Arnold is absolutely correct. Back in 2018, when we did this report, it was council who raised the issue of the deputy warden being undercompensated. And at that point in time, if I remember correctly, it was Councillor Todd Kay saying, hey, look, deputy warden needs to be addressed. And there was motion on the floor at that point in time to increase the salary by $1,000 a month for $12,000. And that was done. And now when we look at the survey for 2021 figures, effectively what the survey is telling you is that it was a good move by council at the time, but a slightly short of goal move by council.
Okay. Does that help, Councillor Napper?
All I want to know is what do they do? I know coming up in the next few months, there's going to be lots of interest in that job. And, I haven't, if they earn it, fine, but I just want to know what the job description is of it.
I think it varies from term to term and year to year, depending on when the warden needs the deputy to fill in. So it's, the last 2 years of COVID have been different, but it does vary from year to year. So do we call a question on that? Oh, Mr. Tivo, you have a comment?
Yeah, and under your rules, under your expectations, the deputy warden is expected to step into the shoes on a snap of a finger. If something happens, that's the expectation of the deputy warden in terms of job description. It's to truly be ready, prepared to step in at any point in time. Now, as Warden Marriott has alluded to, it really depends on the individual in the warden's chair in terms of how much they rely on the deputy warden. But your job description, your expectation is for that individual to be ready at the drop of a pin.
Deputy Warden Han.
There's also an expectation of attending and being part of other committees, such as the Woodlands and such as the Research Park. So you attend those meetings as part of the leadership on those committees.
Good point. Any other question? Councillor Napper?
That's all I wanted to hear.
Okay. Anybody virtually? I didn't look there the last few seconds. If not, did we? Oh, Councillor Bradley.
I mean, I was supportive of the compensation because you don't know exactly what you're going to be asked to do. I just think the deputy warden once a year or so should just give a one-pager report on what their activities are. And as Mayor Hand indicated, there's obligations that come with being the deputy warden, being on the Research Park Board, and other engagements. I just think so the public knows what they're doing.
Good point. Thank you. We did call the vote. Okay, so we'll call the vote on the motion to support the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And that brings us to, let's see here, number B of A. So report dated May the 4th regarding Old Lakeshore Road, City of Sarnia. Councillor Arnold, please.
So move the recommendation, Warden Chair or Warden Marriott.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Miller. Any comments before I call the vote? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And reports requiring a motion, Section B, Social Services Division. Report dated May the 4th regarding Canada-wide early learning and childcare agreement staffing. How would you like to proceed? Councillor Cook. Okay, moved by Councillor Cook, seconded by Councillor White. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Napper.
What is the difference between this and daycare centers.
Ms. Colasani, would you like to comment on that, please?
Certainly, through you, Warden Marriott, to Councillor Napper. There really isn't any difference. This speaks to the licensed childcare centers existing in our community. They'll just have the opportunity now to join this new agreement.
Didn't we go down this road once before, just here a few years ago? Why would the government want us to get us back into daycare?
Clarify that, Councillor Napper, certainly. The County of Lambton is the Consolidated Service System Manager for the childcare. We aren't going to directly operate them, so we're going to oversee, flow the dollars from the province and the federal government, work with them around licensing, around staffing, but we certainly are not doing direct operation. We're just the oversight.
Any other questions before we call the vote? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? That's carried. Brings us to item number 15, committee minutes. First, we have the Woodlands Hearing Board minutes of April 19th. So we have a movers, moved by Councillor Arnold, seconded by Councillor Rumbouts. All in favor? It's carried. Item B, committee AM minutes of April the 20th. Councillor Arnold, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. Warden Marriott, members of County Council, I present the committee AM minutes of April 20th for your consideration.
Thank you. Item number 1, under Infrastructure and Development Services Division, correspondence to receive and file. 1 and 2, actually. And then under Information Reports, under Infrastructure and Development as well, report that was received and filed. And number 4, under Information Report dated April 20th regarding Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force. And reports requiring a motion. Number 5, report regarding update appointed bylaw for inspectors. And a report, number 6, report dated April 20th regarding County Road 33, Front Street. Under Public Health Services Division, number 7 and 8 was correspondence to receive and file. Information reports is number 9 from Public Health Services Division. And under Cultural Services Division, number 10 is an information report. And under reports requiring a motion was number 11. And a report dated April 20th regarding museums, gallery, and archives collections is number 12. And number 13 was adjournment. Councillor Arnold, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. Warden Marriott, members of County Council, I move this day's minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor White. All in favor? That's carried. Item C, committee PM minutes. Councillor Ferguson, please.
Thank you, Warden Merritt. Fellow councillors, I present committee PM minutes for the approval.
Thank you. Under Long-Term Care Division, we had information reports. Number 1. Item number 2 was Finance, Facilities, and Court Services Division, information reports. Reports requiring a motion was number 3, year-end monitoring report. Number 4 was a report dated April the 20th regarding 2022 tax policy. Under Social Services Division, correspondence to receive and file was number 5. And information reports from Social Services Division be received and filed was number 6. Reports requiring a motion regarding homelessness prevention program was number 7. Report dated April 20th regarding reaching home incremental funding was number 8. And number 9 was adjournment. Councillor Ferguson, please.
I would like to move the minutes of PM committee. Thank you.
we have a seconder? Councillor Cook. All in favor? That's carried. We have no items tabled from previous meetings, and that brings us to number 17, notice of motion by Councillor White.
Thank you, Warden Marriott, members of County Council. As for the motion in regards to real estate practices, I'm going to withhold that motion for another 2 meetings given the writ drop at the provincial level. I want to ensure that it is given fair opportunity to be reviewed by the province. So I will withhold that motion for now. As far as item number 1, climate change adaptation and mitigation strategy, I will move that the Lambton County Council request staff to identify a process to create a climate change adaptation and implementation strategy, and that any applicable expenses for such process be referred to the 2023 budget. And if I have a seconder, I will speak to the motion.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bird. Go ahead, Councillor White.
Thank you, Warden. Thank you to my seconder. On November 22nd, 2021, the City of Sarnia endorsed its Climate Change Action Plan and Implementation Strategy. This plan was partially funded through the grant provided by FCM. It took a few years to accomplish, many hours of hard work, many extra meetings by staff committee, environmental advisory committee, stakeholders who provided invaluable input to the process. This, of course, followed June 17th, 2019, where City of Sarnia Council declared a climate change emergency. This is an opportunity, I think, for the county to follow suit with our largest municipality already having done the brunt of the legwork. I don't think there is much, honestly, to do differently. That's just my opinion, of course. The Environmental Advisory Committee for the City of Sarnia is prepared and willing to work with the county to adapt and perhaps modify the plan if County Council sees fit. There is certainly a difference between the strategy as it would need to be implemented and recognized in the city as opposed to other areas of the county. I recognize that there are significant challenges that the county municipalities might face that the city might not. But that said, with the benefit of the funding that the city received and the significant workload that the city put into this strategy, I think it would be a much simpler process here for the county to just move forward with this. And so my request today is simply to ask staff to identify a process that would fairly accommodate a climate change mitigation strategy and an adaptation strategy with minimal expenses. So I'll leave it at that for now. Again, it's a request right now for a process. If any of my colleagues have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thanks.
Okay. Questions or comments? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you very much, Warden Marriott. I'd just like to turn to Mr. Cole, and I believe there's been a substantial amount of work done through the county already in regards to this, and maybe, Mr. Cole, you're not quite the right person to ask this to, but I thought that the infrastructure committee or the infrastructure folks were working on these types of things over the last few years. And as far as, I don't want to see the county adopt some plan and then it's going to be forced on St. Clair. St. Clair needs to develop their own plan if we're going to move forward with this. So, but if the county at our level and the things that we do, if county's not doing anything, which I believe they actually are, then maybe we could get some input back from our senior staff, please.
Okay, is that something you're comfortable with, Mr. Cole? To comment on?
Maybe I'll start and then we can have some other input as well. I think through you, Mr. Warden, Councillor Arnold, I think maybe you're referring to the sustainability plan that was developed several years ago. That was developed, and I will acknowledge that the program and the study, the work that the city did goes well beyond what I think those sustainability plans had built as a base. It brought those actions up to another level. That's not to say we're not engaged in considering climate change and sustainable practices. We are doing that in many of our ongoing operations and construction practices, and I'll speak to the utilization of warm mix in my own public works department as an excellent carbon reduction strategy and a very useful tool in the road construction industry. Maybe I think Andrew Meyer actually has done a little bit of legwork into this already, and maybe I can pass the floor over to him.
Mr. Meyer, please.
Through you, Mr. Warden, thank you for the opportunity, and just to provide some additional context to where we stand today. The county does have a Going Green committee, similar to Environmental Advisory Committee with the city. We have looked at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities resources, training programs, grant opportunities similar to the Municipalities for Climate Innovation program that supported the city study. And the Going Green Committee is looking at undertaking that initial phase that the city undertook, the audit process, to really understand where we stand on the climate adaptation maturity scale, looking at policies, current actions, and opportunities that could be missed. So on behalf of the Going Green Committee, I'll be working with the GM team to sort of provide a status update, and if the motion is supported by this council, we'll certainly circle back and identify a process for council's consideration. So.
Councillor Rumbouts.
I'm all for green initiatives and doing what we can to increase the environmental safeties. It sounds to me like staff is already on board with this. I think in government we spend a lot of money and time on studies and committees and things like that. I would rather see the money be put towards actually doing things like, for example, maybe changing some of our vehicles to compressed natural gas, or doing things that are actually going to make a difference in our communities, as opposed to more studies and more committees. We have a lot of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Thank you. Yeah, good comments and questions from my colleagues there. And I think the important point is that this isn't about funding another study at all. This is exactly as Mr. Meyer pointed out and Mr. Cole, identifying things that are in many cases, much like with the city of Sarnia, there were policies that were already being implemented, but they were in some ways standalone policies. An implementation strategy such as this identifies not only mitigation, which I think is what most of us think about when we're talking about climate change, but the actual adaptation too. So identifying storm sewers, drainage issues, things that where the 100-year storm is now becoming every couple of years, those basement floods that used to affect certain folks in certain parts of the county are starting to spread across to many more folks, and beyond that. So what happens when we have a mass power outage due to overconsumption simply because the temperatures continue to rise? Where are our safe cooling stations across the municipality while temperatures get to an extreme and dangerous level for our most vulnerable folks? What are we doing with our homeless population during some of these extreme weather events? So these are things that can be easily identified and have been identified in the city's plan itself, and it doesn't discount the work that's already being done. In fact, if anything, it just creates a slightly bigger umbrella to overarch and bring some of these items together and creates actionable items with an opportunity to remain accountable, whether it's through the county's committee or if county council chooses to continue to be actively involved in that process and measuring the outcomes as the years and decades go by. So that's all I want to say about that. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments before we call the vote? Councillor Cook.
Thank you. Would this be involve changes to our official plan at all going forward? Because some of the things you're talking about could be potentially official plan changing, which, again, not saying it's going to be great cost, but it could be timing before you can get that officially through official plans, which again could come down to the lower tiers who, again, are going to have to maybe absorb some costs that they maybe weren't expecting to absorb. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Warden. It's a good question again. We have seen some of that discussion filter through into planning issues at the city already as a result of that. But again, a lot of that just becomes recommendations. It's certainly up to council to implement those as needed or as desired during those discussions. So when the official plan process is underway, you might see those recommendations filter through a little more strongly for consideration, but obviously it's council ultimately who will bind us to those measures as needed.
Deputy Warden Hand.
So just for clarification, I appreciate the effort that Councillor White's done towards this, but related to what Mr. Myers said, so this study strategy is already in place through the Growing Green and beyond. I just don't want to have duplication if it's something the county already has in place.
Mr. Meyer, please.
Through you, Mr. Warden, thank you for the question. So the county currently does not have a climate action mitigation strategy. Simply something we're proactively looking at, just auditing our current practices, seeing what we're currently doing, what we could be doing to improve based on the model that the city has adopted. So we don't currently have a strategy in place.
Any further questions, comments? Looks like we're ready to vote. Does anybody need clarification on the motion? I guess it was fairly clear. It's on print. All in favor? Opposed? I think that carries. Brings us to number 18, other business. Is there any other? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bradley, go ahead, please.
I just have a very straightforward notice of motion. It came out of discussions with the research parks, SLEP, and other organizations about recently announced funding. Peel region just got $400,000 for electrical charging stations. It's a really complex issue. I think this could take years before we have the infrastructure in place, but the reality is it's going to happen. And I want to make sure that, and that's why I've come to the county, at the county level, that as electrical vehicles become more part of our common life, that we are prepared for it and we can assist people. And this is a staff-driven task force. Just bring people together, talk about it, talk about the reality. And if they feel that we're premature, then I accept that. But at the same time, I think that we just need to be prepared for this. Otherwise, we will be left behind with what's happening in the next 2 years. So that's what this motion's about.
Okay, that is a motion, Councillor Bradley?
The motion that's in the on the paper there.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Stark. Councillor Napper, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm just going back to memory. Didn't we go through this once before with all these charging stations? I know the county has several around, and I thought we had Mike, maybe you can clear this up. There was some in the city of Sarnia.
Yes, actually, good question, Mayor Napper. That has come up. The fact is that there were some sporadic efforts made, and I will give the county credit for probably, and Mr. Van Horn shared with me what the county has done, but that was in a different day and age. This wasn't before we've had this massive investment in electrical vehicle manufacturing in the last 6 months. So yes, it didn't work as well as it should, but I think it's because we didn't have a proper plan, either in the city or across the full county, to really exploit and to grab some of this funding that's out there. So, I always, if you failed once, then you go back and try it again on something this significant.
Maybe Mr. Pilarchio could clarify. I think he has some information that happened in the past.
Through the warden, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide you some background on this issue. In 2018, the county installed and implemented 13 charging stations across the county. 2 are in our admin building. There's some at the long-term care centers, LMB, and so forth. So that came with a cost to the county of approximately $160,000, the capital cost. We received funding of approximately $105,000 $5,000. So the net cost to the county is approximately $55,000. A question that we often get here at the county and through county council is the usage. Usage has been relatively low. COVID has a lot to have done with that. So, basically we had approximately, $4,000 in rough figures as far as revenue that we've collected at our charging stations. About 1,300 connections during that time period alone. This recent funding envelope that we're still researching the methodology on the application. I can tell you in the past that each local municipality had the opportunity to bid and basically apply for these, and I really don't see that changing so much, but we're still researching that. There's level 2 chargers, there's level 3 charging stations that could happen, and even under the level 3 charging stations, for example, a fast charger under your level 3 at the 50 kilowatt to 99 kilowatt hour is, let's say, mid-grade fast charger. Our understanding is that they'll fund up to 50% of the total program cost to a maximum of $50,000 per charger. 10 chargers, that's an easy $500,000. So we are, looking at understanding the business cases behind it, noting that it's not all about financials as well. Sometimes you can't quantify the environmental benefit of these initiatives. We'd be happy to report back as to basically some proposed next steps moving forward and so forth. But just thought I'd share some information, provide some comments on the context of this initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Palacchio. I believe Councillor Arnold had a question.
Thank you, Warden Merritt. First of all, I'll second the motion because I think we need to have more information brought back to County Council and in regards, especially when there is a program out there. And I believe, Deputy Mayor Miller can correct me, but I believe we were one of the ones that didn't get we applied, but we didn't get the money for it when it went around before. And I think Warwick, they also applied, and I think they actually received some money or no?
We had a private company come in.
Okay, all right. So I'll second the motion.
Okay, I apologize for not having that seconder first. Oh, yes, we did. Councillor Stark, you seconded that, didn't you?
I did, Mr. Gordon, and I'd like to speak to it if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I think that in using the reference that staff have indicated as 2018 as a yardstick, so much has changed since 2018 to now. Tesla Motor Company virtually didn't exist in 2018. Now they're a major player in the transportation industry. The province of Ontario and the government of Canada have put forth tremendous amount of support, financial support, for the city of Windsor and the city of Oshawa. The reality is that this is coming. The industry is changing. The transportation network is changing. And we can do the studies that we all think are appropriate. The fact is the industry is changing and the entire economy is changing in this field. So it seems to me that the infrastructure necessary to support this industry is something that we as a county should be supporting. Thank you.
Any other Councillor Rumboats and then Councillor Napper?
Yeah, I think that it oftentimes gets forgotten, the rural communities, and how important it is that they have these public charging stations. So the majority of the people who own these vehicles come from the urban centers, and they have charging stations in their own homes if they own a vehicle. But it's when they want to go from Sarnia to London or to Toronto, they're oftentimes worried about running out of charge between that time, or going from Windsor out to the lake, things like that. So it's really important to have these public ones available in the rural communities like St. Clair, like Warwick, like Plimpton, Wyoming, so that the public has that assurance that they can make it from point A to point B.
Okay, Councillor Napper.
Yeah, basically that's what I was going to speak on. I've been following up on these cars, maybe looking at purchasing one And that's one of the biggest drawbacks to them, is there's no place to get them. And I think if we move forward with Mr. Mike Bradley's motion here, we're showing the people, yeah, we're involved in this too. We got some skin in the game. The government's bringing these electric cars, and I think it's going to be a big boom to us. And I would certainly support this, and I think it goes a long ways. Maybe sending the message out there to people that yeah, there are municipalities that are moving ahead with this.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Warden. My colleagues expressed my thoughts very, very clearly. This is an important part of public infrastructure going forward. And Mr. Pilarchio, you're exactly right. COVID had an impact on it. You could imagine 2 extra connections per month for the last 2 years, but because I wasn't able to come to the building, I couldn't plug in. So you can compensate for that in your numbers.
Oh, Councillor Arnold and then Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. One of the things that we don't hear too much of is the electrical grid, and it's not being upgraded as fast as the demands are going to be placed on it. And the other piece is who's going to pay all the road tax? Because that's not something that's ever talked about either with electric vehicles, unless I just miss it, and I do miss things, of course. But anybody that's running on fossil fuels, yes, they're paying their share of the road tax, but I don't see any road tax being gathered from any electrical vehicles. And as that increases, that's got to be addressed somehow.
Thank you. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. So the motion is asking for a task force to bring together all interested parties to discuss the merits of developing the application, etc., and of course applying for this funding. But I think we should take a step back. Everybody's focusing on the glossy end product. Yes, times are changing, everything's changing, technology is changing, but we're not focused enough on all the background, all the research, all the technical side. And Councillor Arnold just mentioned a couple of the points here, and I'd like to just read something. I just made some notes. Standing up, you can see I'm reading from notes. But anyway, so the electric vehicles, along with their charging stations and batteries, are all cost prohibitive. The electricity grid will not be able to keep up with the demand. There are technical limitations on storing electricity. Plus, we do not have the necessary infrastructure in place for moving that amount of hydroelectric power. Already high electricity costs will increase astronomically with all the needed adjustments to the power plants and hydroelectric power. So environmental impacts are also of huge concern, with greater greenhouse gas emissions during battery production. By ignoring the social and environmental costs, governments and investors will only exacerbate these problems. Millions of electric car batteries will retire in the next decade. What will happen to them? Remember, these batteries require large amounts of raw materials, including lithium, nickel, and cobalt, the mining for which has climate, environmental, and human rights impacts. Right now, in my opinion, governments should be promoting an alternative source of power, absolutely, but the one that can not only be produced on demand, but that doesn't threaten life on our planet. So at this point, I would definitely not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Weber next.
Warden, I guess clarification, are we talking about electrical chargers at our facilities? I know that's what we did back in 2018, was chargers for staff and the visiting public to come to the museums and that. Or are we talking about charging stations in our infrastructure that's going to compete with the defunct gas stations that will become charging stations, or the restaurants that put a charger out to attract people? I think there's what are we looking for? Are we looking to put in electric chargers to make a profit or to break even for the county? Because I think we're maybe dreaming a little bit if we're going to put a charging station someplace in our infrastructure, and maybe that's not what's being talked about at all, but this is for our own staff at our own facilities, or our visitors coming to our museums and libraries that have going to spend an hour or two and get charged up, not the traveling public. Anybody speak to that or clarification on it? Am I out to lunch.
I think Councillor Bradley would comment.
Yeah, I'm just always amazed how far ahead people get, and I appreciate some of the comments being made. This motion is about establishing a task force. I checked with the research park, I checked with the county, I checked with the city, and I checked with others saying, would you be interested in sitting down to talk about a strategy? Nothing more, no commitments. And again, read the motion for those that are a student of language. We established a staff task force to bring together all the interested parties, and that includes the lower tier, that includes the private sector, to discuss the merits. It's that simple. Just have that discussion. And I do, Tamara, I do recall years ago, you probably do too, there was an effort which didn't move forward the way I thought it would, to establish a Gold Coast electrical charging network. And there was some discussions about doing that using the hotel sector and all that. That's all this would do, is bring this back up for a discussion about the merits. I'm not here to debate the environmental aspects or the other parts of this and the timing on it. It's simply to get the research park, the county, and the others into that discussion now, because I'll tell you what's going to happen is that as we move quicker and quicker, as Councillor Stark was talking about what's happening in the industry, we could easily be left behind if we're not in place, at least understanding what our options are.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Can we call the question, Mr. Warden?
Yes, please. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Is there any other business? The only thing you might as well mention it now, you all have a book on at your desk, and I was advised by Ms. Colasani that this has been given to everybody because the author was involved in the Circles program. It is signed by the author, who is, I believe, in the city of Sarnia, Ms. Colasani. Yeah. So if you don't want to read it yourself, I'm sure you have a little one in your family that would make good use of this book. Mr. Field.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I wasn't going to say anything today. It's likely the quietest I've ever been at a council meeting.
Very true.
And anybody that's ever watched Petrolia would know that. I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I know there was likely debate about having an alternate come in and fill in, but I think it is a good opportunity. I'm one of the rare people that does watch your live streams on a regular basis. So it is a little different than being the armchair quarterback at home laughing and talking. I mean, debating. I join into the conversation sometimes, so I do appreciate it. I appreciate the amount of time that every member of County Council spends, because I did do a lot of research. This is likely the smallest agenda you've had in a long time, so it was a good one to start with, but I do thank County Council for allowing me the opportunity to do this, and thank staff for making this easier on us. And to Mr. Warden, I won't watch every one of Enniskillen's council meetings. I told him that if he did call me out, I would be on every one of them to find out about the drainage issues in Enniskillen. So
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Any other business? Deputy Warden Hand.
I really appreciate the gift of this book, and I look forward to giving it to my granddaughter. But I just wanted to ask, have we donated copies to our local libraries? I'm sure that we have, but I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Weber.
Thank you, Warden. Just a comment. If any of you are interested in bird watching, if you've seen the news lately, there's been a very extremely rare marsh sandpiper that's first time spotted in North America at the Thedford Lagoons. So there's been a number of people from across Ontario. I understand somebody's flying in from Houston today to observe the bird. So it's caused quite a stir in the birding world.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's been in the news. I got the call about it on Saturday afternoon and was able to relay to Mayor Weber, and it all come together quite nice. So Lambton's on the map again for some rarities. Anything else under other business? We'll go to notice of bylaws, 10 through 16. Mr. Tifo, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. It is moved by Councillor Arnold, seconded by Councillor Byrd, that bylaws 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 of 2022, as circulated, be taken as read a first and second time.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
It is moved by Councillor Byrd, seconded by Councillor Arnold, that bylaws 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 of 2022, be, as circulated, be taken as read a third and final time.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I would look for a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, June the 1st, 2022, with in-camera set for 9 a.m. Moved by Deputy Warden Han, seconded by Councillor Weber. All in favor? It's carried, and we'll be renewing our O Canada at the end of the meeting starting today. So I hope you've all brought your singing voice. You haven't been affected by COVID. You can sing loud and clear.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far